In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 KFC interview questions, and I'm going to help you plan fantastic answers to these questions. So the first question that is basically 100% guaranteed to come up is, what times can you work? And so when you're doing this, 3 things to think about. It has to be honest. Don't tell them you can work at a time where you can't. That's going to come back and bite you. You have to be as flexible as you possibly can. Flexibility is really important. That's one of the things they're looking for. And you have to be committed. You don't want to be like, oh, I don't like working at this time and I'm not really interested. You have to be like, I'm going to try and do my best as far as possible. And so some good things to mention is evenings and weekends. If you mention that you can work evenings and weekends, your chance of getting the job just increased because you're going to solve one of the company's problems. Instead of talking about problems and barriers, it's better to talk about how you've managed other commitments. So, for example, saying, I've managed to free up these times by doing this. That's a great way to discuss it, rather than saying, I've got this commitment, I can't possibly do it, I'm not going to do anything about it. School holidays, another one. If you can work those, mention it. If you can't, don't mention it, of course. And it's better to talk about, particularly if they quiz you, to say, I would prefer X, but I can be flexible and give as much flexibility as you can. And a great way to think about answering this question is to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. If there's certain times you cannot work, there's no reason to bring it up unless they ask you. Don't lie, but don't volunteer any negatives. Focus on, this is what I can do. So, for example, if the only time you could possibly work is, say you're a single mother, and you could only possibly work during normal business hours, you just say, I'm really happy to work normal business hours. And then if they don't ask, could you do evenings and weekends, then, don't volunteer that. So focus on the positives, be as flexible as you can, and show that you're committed. Second question, what can you tell us about KFC? And so the way to approach this is with the diagram. So you want to get everything that everyone knows about KFC, like the really obvious things, what it does, what it sells. It's in the fast food business. You want to include some things that only some people would know, because it makes you look like you have more information than most people. And then if you include a few things that only a small number of people, and perhaps even your interviewer, doesn't know, that shows that you've actually went out and done your research. So I've given you, quite a few things to focus on. And so if you look at these, this will give you a start to your research. And my top tip is, if you read the Yum Brands annual report called Form 10K, if you actually go and read that, you will stand out so much. Very, very few people read it. Most people don't know it exists. An interesting fact is that KFC was owned by the tobacco company R.G. Reynolds and then became part of Pepsi, which is maybe why they serve Pepsi in their store. You've got the fact that it's a franchise, it's owned by Yum Brands, you've got Colonel Sanders, it's international, founded in 1930, and you've got the famous slogan. So getting all those ideas and some discussion about the key things that KFC does, the really obvious things, and you should pass that question. Third question, how would you deal with an angry or upset customer? And this is a really simple question as long as you get in the really important ideas. So the first thing to get in, and using this word really is quite impressive, de-escalation. That means that you're going to make everybody more calm, you're not going to make the situation any worse, and you're all about calming people down, which is a great way to start. You're going to be very clear to your interviewer that you're going to follow the company's policies and procedures. You're not going to improvise and do your own thing. You're going to follow the procedures. If a company procedure and what the customer wants are different, well, you can't just give away free food to make them happy. Well, if you don't have the authority, you can't do that. So make it clear you're going to follow the policy. You're going to do it with empathy. You're going to have a kind of customer is always right attitude as far as possible. You're going to be very polite, friendly, and ultimately you want to positively represent the brand. You want KFC to look good out of this interaction, that you've done a great job and you've turned this situation around. That's your ultimate goal. The other thing to mention is that you don't retaliate. If a customer's shouting at you, you don't shout back at them. You never do that. Make it very clear. And also say, if it's getting very challenging, that you will ask for support and you'll work with your team members. Question 4, strengths and weaknesses. So a great strength is something that is genuine. So it really is a strength. It's well evidenced, so your strength becomes believable and it's highly relevant. So it's bang on what you're going to be doing in the job. So for example, you could say, I'm very good at providing excellent customer service to challenging customers, if you refer to the reference from my previous manager where she recounts and so on. So in this example, this is like a really great answer. You've got something that's absolutely key to the job, which is working with challenging customers, and you've got really fantastic evidence. So think about structuring your answer that way. Get a great relevant example and then put some evidence, and you'll have a great answer. Weaknesses is a dangerous one. You have to be very careful with this. You have to have a real weakness. So saying, I'm too much of a perfectionist, that's not a real weakness. That's no good. You have to talk about that you're addressing this weakness, that you're doing something about it, and the weakness shouldn't be like hugely important to the job. For example, saying sometimes I come across a little rude. Well, if you're going to work with customers and you're a little rude, well, that's too big a problem. Don't bring that up. That's going to get you in trouble. A great way to structure an answer is, one of the weaknesses I am aware of is, so say your weakness, not hugely important to the job, remember, and then in the next sentence say, I've been working on this by, and that hits all of the key points of this question and should cause you to be scored really high. Fifth question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So a good answer, which I've got on the left-hand side, is credible, which means we can believe what you're saying. It's mapped out, so you've got a plan, and you're making use of all of the opportunities that the company is giving you. A bad example, which on the right side is something that you really don't believe, that you don't have a plan, and it's not fitting with KFC's goals. So think about what the person on the other end wants out of an employee and structure your answer around that. The worst possible thing to say is not with KFC or doing something completely different, because they'd rather retain good employees. And so three ideas for how to start this is, you could talk about more responsibility. You're looking to be really great at this job and maybe become an assistant manager, area manager. Maybe you're going to go through that, so you can talk about the rough idea of how you'd like your career to progress and how you're going to use the opportunities the company gives you to do that. You don't have to be looking for promotions. You can just talk about being exceptional in my role. So if you're going for a crew member, you might talk about being really great in that job and also supporting other employees and maybe getting involved a little bit in training up new staff. That'd be a great answer. Doesn't have to be about moving up. Can either be moving up or talk about how you're going to be really great at your job in 5 years. And finally, some questions to ask. So I've given you 5 ideas of fantastic questions that you could ask at the end of the interview. And the last thing is, and I've got it in the last box, is always make sure you ask one question that is directly relevant to what has come up in the interview. That's just good advice. So hopefully this video has been very helpful to you and you're now more confident about your application and know what to expect. Best of luck. Thank you very much for watching.